Anyway, guys, welcome to Politically Deconstructing with me and my lovely co-host, Miss Lady Google. Today we're going to be talking about the unfortunate shooting of Renee Good. We are going to be taking it from a partisan level to a nonpartisan level. We want to talk about the facts. We want to talk about what happened. And even if you don't agree, I hope you'll hang around and listen because I think this is really important to talk about it from a realistic, legalistic, and also psychological perspective. What do you think, Googs?
Sorry, I was sharing it out. I was listening.
No, you're good. You're good.
I'm really tired of seeing nonpartisan issues get politicized and turn into the us versus them. And this is one of those things that we just need to discuss from a real legal standpoint, and it shouldn't be a partisan issue at all. So I'm ready.
I absolutely agree. I think something interesting is I think a lot of people feel like this was some sort of prolonged timeline. In fact, you're talking in a matter of maybe 20 seconds. She went from being very much with us to being unalived. And this wasn't any sort of prolonged endeavor. We do know that she was actively alerting the neighborhood to ICE. That's what we can say. We do know that she was very much kind and cordial to the ICE officer that was around her. I think one of the most astounding things was when he is kind of walking around the car that first time and she's like, "It's okay, dude. I'm not mad at you."
Yeah.
And I mean, despite that it may be a nuisance or annoying to, officers trying to do their job, it's well within her First Amendment rights. Now, blocking traffic, that is a little bit different,
Right.
But blocking traffic is not an imminent threat.
It is not. And we also, now that we have the footage leading up to the actual event, we can even see that while she was in fact impeding the one side of traffic, we also saw her put her vehicle in reverse to allow cars to go around her. So
Yes.
While she was impeding traffic, she was not necessarily blocking all traffic. There was still room to maneuver around. We can argue whether or not that makes certain situations unsafe, but a minor traffic nuisance at best.
Yeah, absolutely. I just feel like when we saw that I think it's about 3 minutes of footage we have to the lead up.
Right.
We see multiple ICE officers kind of off in the distance, and magically it cuts off before the actual event. But I'm making no allegations there. I just find it odd. But it comes up right to the event, and you see she doesn't leave her vehicle. Like she's not out of her vehicle. The wife is around, and I think it's something to acknowledge that the wife was maybe somewhat seen as antagonistic, but again, within her First Amendment rights. If you go into being an officer, you have to know that that is a possibility, that people are not going to like you.
Right.
So
no, I agree. I think we also need to take into consideration that Minnesota specifically in this area has been training residents because ICE has been so present in Minneapolis. Neighborhoods have created neighborhood watches specifically for ICE, and they've made agreements with each other to go out and blow whistles, honk their horns. Now, impeding traffic's a little bit different, but they've made an active effort as a community to find ways to alert the neighborhood when ICE is in the area. And that's what she was doing. That's why the neighbors were on the street blowing whistles. ICE was conducting door-to-door raids. This wasn't people that were just out actively following ICE around. ICE came into their neighborhood. They had prepared for this, and they were following their neighborhood watch protocol about how they were going to handle this situation.
that kind of segues me into a little bit of a different point, but I'm wondering what you think about this. One of the most disturbing things to me was that JD Vance said they were doing door-to-door knocks. We have clear precedent here that once it becomes non-voluntary, like a show me your papers type of business, they are not okay anymore. You are not allowed to do that at that point. So maybe it was a slip up. I frankly think that sometimes they just don't care about the law in general, but I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt. But that is certainly problematic considering the case law we have, that were they just knocking at the door and being like, "Hey, can you show me your
Right.
ID, but not
Does
forcing
anybody
them
live
to?
here
Yeah.
that is in, I mean,
Yeah.
were they doing what the Supreme Court now has said is okay? Were they like racially profiling based on who answers the door and their skin tone? Were they going to just proceed to the next house, or were they asking for papers? Like, these are things we don't really know. So we don't really
Yeah.
know exactly what door to door knocking
Well,
entails.
and unfortunately, one of the things that is really truly unfortunate at this time is that since the Fed has actively cut Minnesota out of this investigation, we may never be fully aware of what actual events led up to it. We have about a 3 minute clip
Right.
right before it, but we have no idea about the extent of what was
Right.
going on in the neighborhood, and we never really will know. And that can speak to a lot of things, but I think like that kind of like really talks about the timeline that we absolutely know. Um, I think one thing we could definitely get into is that like if you are actively supporting agencies not being accountable, that's something you should look at. Whether you're a Democrat or a Republican, I don't care. Like, it does not matter. Ruby Ridge still happened, Waco still happened, this still happened, multiple events have still happened. And here's the thing, whatever side you lean on, holding government agencies accountable, they should not be able to get away with whatever they want. And I feel like that can be a tacit endorsement of this if you're sort of wiffle waffling on this
Yeah, I
one.
mean, you make the point all the time that regardless of what side you're on, you shouldn't trust the government regardless of who's in power. Like we've had
Absolutely
the
not.
discussion you and I have about knowing your rights and understanding what your rights are. And this is definitely a violation of your rights issue that
Yeah.
shouldn't be partisan. Like you're protected, Fifth Amendment, Fourth Amendment, 14th Amendment, any of those, First Amendment, those rights are not divided by party. Every single person is entitled to those. So it's not a partisan issue. Your rights are your rights.
Well, and like something like I feel I've had to repeat in the past few days more than I normally do is like, look, I, for instance, personally despise like the Nick Fuentes Schnazi crowd, right? Like I am not a fan and I will never support that. However, I still don't even think he should be silenced as long as he is non-violently expressing his views, as shitty as that sounds. That is the cost of freedom of speech. Because the bigger thing I worry about is what happens when my speech becomes dissident speech. What happens when, because it's always going to be a pendulum swing between what's okay with one side and what's okay with the
Right.
other. You have to be willing to look at it and
As a
take a step
totality.
back. Yeah. And
Yeah.
that's another thing we can talk about is like sort of the totalitarian, what am I thinking of here? My mind just went like the
Yeah.
totality of circumstances here in this
Yes.
case involving the officer.
Right. And
So, oh,
you
please.
probably would be better to bring this up than me because you're like way more, legal minded than I am. But I think you're referring to the Barnes case where they
Yeah, I mean, there's several, like, there's a ton of case law, but at
right.
this point, like, when we're looking at just the totality of circumstances, it means you don't just get to consider what his thought was right at that moment. You have to look at sort of things that are coming around in this circumstances in the most simplistic way possible, because I think that makes it easier. You don't get to just look at what was that split second decision. Well, what kind of led up to that decision?
Right.
Well, when we look at Renee Good, again, the wife was slightly agitational, but the wife was also not the one unalive. So I want to make that point right now. However, still, it's not an imminent threat. While she was impeding traffic, she was not completely blocking traffic. Not an imminent threat. When he came around, her last words to him were, "I'm not mad at you, dude," with a smile on her face. Not an imminent threat. But I think a lot of this goes into something we were kind of discussing earlier, which was some of the circumstances surrounding the officer. I don't know if maybe you wanted to go through that because I think it sort of makes this clearer in a
Right.
way.
So I feel like by now the information is out there enough, and I did some digging into the actual lawsuit where we know that this officer was previously dragged by a vehicle.
Yes.
Um, he had pulled over somebody. It was a targeted pullover. He identified himself as ICE, told the gentleman to roll his window down. The gentleman refused. He told him, roll the window down or I'm going to bust the window. He then busted out the window, reached his arm in to unlock the door from the inside. That gentleman took off. His arm was caught inside. The officer's arm was caught. He got drug about 50 yards. He ended up having to have like 12 stitches in his arm. Clearly, from a human aspect, like from a human point of view,
Yeah.
that's going to leave an impression on you, right? Like he was physically injured in the line of duty. He has, in my opinion, kind of a history of not making great decisions where vehicles are involved, like maybe putting himself in harm's way, reaching into a vehicle that is running with somebody still behind the wheel, put yourself in harm's way. No different than stepping in front of this vehicle, which, let's be real, we've discussed this as well. When she first put her vehicle in reverse,
Yes.
he stepped towards that vehicle
Yes.
as it was in reverse.
And
But
if
go ahead.
anybody needs a breakdown on exactly where you see that, I think both me and Googs have video breakdowns on our profile. So please go to them and look at it if you need a video breakdown.
But this guy, I think the real question from a human standpoint and from a law enforcement standpoint is, was he actually ready to be back on the street? Like, we talk on the left and the right about, like, let's talk about like gun control and stuff. We constantly talk about the fact that we don't have access to mental health the way that we should. This is definitely something that should be taken into consideration when we're talking about this officer, because whether we like what he did or not, we have to take the human element in and take into consideration that there was a bit of a trauma response there. In my opinion, I believe that from a human aspect, there was probably a bit of a trauma response in his.
And that's the thing I kind of agree with you on. Like, a lot of people are sort of making this supposition like it was like directly murder. No, murder requires generally, unless you're talking about like class 2 and like other things. There's some states that differ on this, but generally, murder requires premeditation. When you're talking about manslaughter, though, which I think would be more applicable to this case, in my opinion, I think potentially maybe reckless, like
Reckless endangerment.
yes. Well, I would say more
we
like
get into the legal of voluntary versus involuntary and all of that, but
I think it's gonna fall more under manslaughter, and I think a lot of times we tend to like really step back and like not see all the things, but you also have to see that there's a human aspect here. I have been very clear that I don't think that this was in any way justified use of deadly force. But two things can be true at once. I can say that I don't believe that he had any premeditated like intent here, but I can also say that he definitely wasn't responsible and that he should be accountable for this.
100%. 100%.
That's something I thought was really interesting. Like, I think we go back and forth a lot, and like, instead of just trying to see that like people fuck up. But I think to your bigger point, I don't think he should have been back. I think there was PTSD there. Like, do we know if he was involved in getting any therapy for this ongoing? I mean, and JD Vance sort of confirmed this when he said, do you think he would be a little sensitive? Like, that's a recipe for disaster for an officer.
And he also should know that, because like, going back, and give me just a second while I get my little list out of, by his own testimony, he was a fugitive operations manager in the region. He states that he was a team leader with the FBI's Joint Terrorism Task Force, a firearms instructor, an active shooter instructor, a field intelligence officer, and a SWAT officer through the course of his career, on top of being a veteran. Like,
yeah,
you would think that
he would know better.
He would know better. And I bet you that we tend to put ourselves in situations that we wouldn't put somebody else in, right? Like, if my employee got hurt, I wouldn't necessarily put my employee right back to work. But I
Yeah.
would take a look at myself and be like, well, things have to get done and I can get through it or whatever. As somebody in a position of power and as a supervisor, he may have made the decision for himself that he could handle it and put himself back on active duty, where he may not have made that same decision for somebody under his care. And there should have been an advisory board that made that decision. And I'm not suggesting that I know for a fact that he was the one that advocated to get himself back. I'm just making assumptions, which many of us have. By the way, while we're speaking of assumptions, Cass, you mentioned that JD Vance had made a couple statements. Can we just take a minute to go back to talking about this? The conversation that we're having today is very different than the conversation we would have had within 24 hours of this happening, because we've gotten so much more evidence, right? And
Yes. So something I like. Oh, I'm so sorry, Googs. My sound was being a
yeah,
little
no, no,
weird.
no,
Please
go.
go ahead. Well, something I really advocate for everybody to do, and like I know this is so hard, but we see it like propagate here on TikTok a lot, mostly because for a lot of us, this is sort of our main social network. But like within I like to say a healthy 48, but 24 is generally okay. Within the first 24 hours of any major event, like if there's a mass shooting, if there is anything like a global event going on, I'm going to hold your hands when I say this. Don't go with what you directly see on the news because I guarantee you that within 24 hours, the perspective may have completely flip-flopped. It may have done a complete 180. And that's why, like, I think like if you're just doing an analysis video, that's very different. But if you're sitting here and talking about these subjects with a vast amount of depth, you have to be very careful because then people have to go behind you and clean up misinformation.
Right.
So that's just a media literacy thing. It really helps. Just wait. I mean, you can take the information in, but be careful about what you do with it because your perspective can alter greatly. In fact, at the beginning of the shooting, and Google knows this, I was like, because of the angle and the only video I had, I was like, maybe that first shot could have potentially been reasonable. But as more angles came in and I looked at it, I was like, there is no way that this was a justified use of deadly force. Like
Right.
like at least
From
in
the
my opinion.
totality of the
Yeah.
circumstances, right?
Totality.
And
Exactly. That's
and
exactly right.
even look at the way the information came out. I mean, we had Christy Nome on TV immediately claiming that this
Yes.
person was following ICE around, was trying to ram them with their vehicle, that the ICE agents actually had vehicles stuck in the snow that they were trying to push out, and she was impeding that. There were all kinds of claims. Donald Trump himself said that this ICE agent got ran over and was fighting for his life at the hospital. I mean, all things that we now know to be
Are not true.
completely untrue. And like, these are the reasons we're asking you to not run straight to social media and speak in absolutes about what happened, because we don't have the information yet. And shame on the administration for not saying, hey, we heard some bad shit happened and we're going to look into it.
Yeah, like I've been fully clear. I would have respected it if they had come out and been like, at this time, we don't think that our officer, had any wrongdoing, but we're going to be doing an internal investigation and we will make sure, everything is looked into, but, he's going to be placed on leave or something to that effect. But we don't even know what's happening at this point. So I don't believe we've heard from him at all, which is valid. I mean, again, I would like to, but I can understand maybe why he hasn't made a statement, and probably he has certain procedures and protocols for that anyway. The government's essentially speaking for him, but it's it's a very bad way to come about people actually actively taking a stand against ICE. It shouldn't have had to get to this point.
Right.
It shouldn't have had to get to this point where we heard story after story after story, but it really takes just that one unaliving to get people motivated. I am pretty anti just any government agency doing fuck shit and not being held accountable. I've been fairly consistent about that. I support them to the extent that they are legally doing their jobs. Beyond that, absolutely not. And that's the bigger problem is that's become a bigger issue.
Well, you go ahead.
Oh, no. Go ahead.
I was going
You're
to say,
good.
as far as like not holding people accountable, law enforcement and whatnot, like we talked today about understanding your rights and knowing the difference between a lawful order and an unlawful order. We talked about, and I've seen some mentions in the comments about the fact that why was she sitting in her vehicle and all of these things and blocking traffic and whatever. Let's be so for real about what ICE's job is, right? Like ICE has no jurisdiction to enforce a traffic stop or to deal with what she was doing. What she was doing may have been impeding traffic. She may have been being a nuisance. They should have picked up the phone and called local law enforcement and had them come out and deal with that.
Well, the allegation, I believe, from what I understood, at least from some of the statements made by the government, is that she was obstructing essentially their business. Like they
Being
were,
able
they,
to,
yeah,
right, impeding them from
yeah,
doing their job. But
they,
I think that we've received enough evidence, video evidence at this point to
well,
dispute that.
Well, see, but a lot of people don't look at all the video, which is kind of why I just wanted to mention this. So JD Vance very clearly stated that they were doing door-to-door knocks. How does somebody being in the middle of a road prevent you from walking on the sidewalk? And I know the sidewalk was there because I've seen it. So and she was clearly letting them go around the vehicles. She let multiple vehicles around. In fact, the ICE agent that was in front of her went around her to get in front of her. You see that in
And
that 3 minute lead
he
up.
made 1.5 loops around her vehicle. Or are you talking about driving behind her to park?
Yeah, he pulls up and then he cuts around her to like get in front of her.
Yeah, because he didn't start in front of her vehicle. He went around her vehicle to park where he was to then exit his vehicle and walk around her.
Yeah, exactly. And that's my thing is like, certainly it's a nuisance. I will agree with that. I'm not going to sit out here and be like, oh, it's not annoying at all, blah, blah. Yes, it's a nuisance. However, as an officer of the law, I would feel like that's part of your training is to deal with nuisances and maybe like, oh, I don't know, de-escalating situations or not getting actively involved with things that may or may not concern you. Now, like ICE's jurisdiction, they do because of the fact that they were saying that she was impeding them from doing their job. However, if it were like a different situation and you were to take it to court, I don't know how far that would get. Let me say it like that.
Right. I don't personally believe, based on what we've seen in video evidence, that argument would hold up.
No,
because like you pointed out, like they can claim that she was impeding them from doing their job, but I don't believe there is any direct evidence of that.
Sure. Yeah, like in a court of law, like I don't know that would hold up.
Completely different, obviously.
Yeah. Oh, I saw a bunch of people sort of in the comments wanting us to talk about the fucking bitch comment. That was the part of the video that disturbed me the most. And I know, Goose, you have a little bit more like sort of experience and knowledge on that. I want to know what you thought about it because that was the...
So it's not that I have more knowledge. Like I have... My favorite uncle is law enforcement, and he has been involved he was in law enforcement for 34 years. He's currently retired, but he still works part-time for a local station around here. And we were discussing that the reaction that he gave, the fucking bitch comment, my uncle said that he's probably been in like 12 or 14 situations over the course of his time on the department where he either had to discharge his weapon and shoot somebody, or he was directly there when that happened and loss of life occurred. And he said that never once in his 34 years on the force did he ever experience that reaction from the officer who discharged their weapon. Most often, and obviously there is a range of emotion, but most often it is remorse, fear, shock, any number of things, but fucking bitch. isn't one he's seen before. And he was actually very kind of like taken aback and appalled that that was what came out of his mouth after discharging his weapon.
Yeah, like I guess for me, it kind of like speaks to maybe a little bit of a state of mind. Like, I'm not arguing that they should be superhuman people. I'm not arguing that they shouldn't be able to have a range of emotion. But, like, as long as I have been actively shooting or involved with firearms, like, and luckily I've never had to use mine on a human. But I don't ever want to imagine having to. I'm a have it and not need it. Like, I'd rather have it than not need it kind of girl. And I still firmly believe that if I ever actually had to do it, it would just tear me up.
Right.
But
And I'm a
again,
hunter. I'm a hunter. And I think I told you this. Like, I go out actively looking to unalive something. And even in that moment, like, I still feel bad. Like, I know that that deer is going to go in my freezer. I always like feel a little bad after I pull the trigger though and hope that I got a clean shot and always check to make sure that I put it down humanely. And it's never, I don't get a feeling of joy or elation from taking down even a deer. So I can't imagine that shooting a human would leave me with a sense of, I don't know, the fucking bitch comment almost felt like a sense of satisfaction to me. Like, fuck it.
yeah, that I feel like yeah, that did give that. Like I can
I'm
try.
speculating to his
Yeah.
state of mind, but that's the feeling that I got from the comment.
Like I can sit here and speculate all day and try to like rationalize the behavior, but like at the end of the day, he said what the fuck he said. Like it is what it is. If somebody was talking about the sort of previous life of Miss Renee Good and how she was more concerned with being an activist than a mother, and I think the criminal record has been brought up. So I'm going to hold everybody's hand when I say that. Go look at the date of birth on that criminal record. I don't know if Googs has it. Do you have it?
I do. Give me just a second. Let me get to, I got to get directly to the green screen. Where's it at? I
Like,
downloaded that. Here we go. Let me flip my camera. Oh, I might need to screenshot it. Give me one more second.
oh no. Here, I'll just put you in the big box. Gotcha. All right. Well, okay. There. That's pretty good.
Yeah, you can see it. On this,
Yeah.
it says that her date of booking was 10/12/24. Her age at the time of booking was 35 years old, but yet her date of birth is 10/7/1980. Like, I get that math are hard, people, but it's not that hard. Like,
No, and that's the thing is like, look, if you want to like make somebody, a villain or the bad guy in a situation, that's fine. But this is not the way to do it. It's so easily proven false. Like, why don't you go find out some actual stuff about her life? In fact, a lot of the reporting that's been done says she was a good person. Like, she was a nice lady. Like, nobody had any like harmful or unkind words about her. And here's the thing. I don't think I'm trying to make anybody a villain in this situation. The only thing I want out of this situation is a commitment that federal agencies will thoroughly investigate employees that do this. I want a commitment that states will be able to participate alongside them. I don't think that that's too much of an ask. And bringing up that, JD Vance and absolute immunity. Hey, Googs, is absolute criminal immunity even a thing?
no.
Yeah.
No. Like, no.
Absolute immunity applies to civil. Now, what that ICE agent does have protection from is sovereign immunity. Or, I'm sorry, the supremacy clause immunity. I don't know why I said sovereign immunity. I apologize. But he doesn't have absolute immunity, and it's clearly stated in case law. So I just feel like maybe we can all make some headway on this if we're actually just willing to look at basic details.
Right. And it shouldn't be a narrative spin. Like,
Yes.
this shouldn't be a left versus right. Like, this isn't, And it's also not like a law enforcement. There are many people that are like, "Well, I support law enforcement." You can support law enforcement. I'm not an ACAB person. I don't think all cops are bastards. I absolutely value our law enforcement officers. That doesn't mean I think all of them act correctly all the time.
Well, two things can always be true at once. I can
Right.
actively say that I don't support an officer. Like my loyalty does not have to be blind.
Right.
I can actively say this officer did something wrong, and then I can also say like I generally at least support law enforcement. I mean, there are going to be times and places and things that occur that are just not going to work out for me in a blind sport. I wouldn't ask you to blindly support anything. That's crazy.
And I think anybody that asks you to blindly support something, you need to question their motivation, because anytime I'm going to give an opinion up here, or I'm going to tell you that I know something, I'm going to encourage you to do your own research and go find out for yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I don't trust like just what we're telling you. Please, by all means, go look it up. If we're wrong, shoot us a DM. We're pretty happy to answer them most of the time, I think. Um, I think that's pretty much all I had for today. Was there anything else you wanted to cover about the shooting or anything else
Well,
going on?
I feel like I feel like we touched on the media literacy a little bit. Folks, like, really pay attention to where you're getting your news from. Just
Absolutely.
because you saw it on TikTok or a creator you like made a video, that doesn't make it gospel. Like, this isn't, you have to do your research, and you need to, like, at least be willing to look at it through the lens of you might be wrong.
Yep. That's happened to me so many freaking times. I'll see something and I'll be like, oh my God, I gotta go make a video about this. And then I takes me 5, 10 minutes and I look into it and I'm like, yeah, that's not actually what happened.
Yeah,
That's
that's
not
not.
actually what
Oops.
was said.
Oops. And we would avoid a lot of oops if we would wait and
Yeah.
get the information first. So, can we
Oh,
oh my goodness.
that's so sweet.
Yes.
Um, But yeah, I mean, I think we've touched on everything we want to touch on today. If you do have a quick question, we'll give it like maybe 2 or 3 more minutes. Please drop it in the comments. Otherwise, we're just going to be straight chilling here waiting on y'all. Where is Jonathan? That is a wonderful question. From We do know that the FBI seized items from the house, but beyond where he is, we just don't
We
know.
don't know. I mean, the latest report I heard was that he's in some sort of protective custody, which,
That's
again,
fair. Yeah.
yeah, like, I get it.
I
I
mean,
get
just
it.
because
So,
he's a bag of, like, I don't like what he did doesn't mean he deserves to lose his life either. That's where it
right.
gets different. Even if I believed he was just the worst person in the world, I wouldn't think he needed to lose his life for it. That's the whole difference. That's the whole problem. And I
Um,
want to be clear. I don't think he's the worst person in the world. I think he had extreme trauma from a past event that poorly affected his decision making now.
I agree with that. Like, and again, that's my own assessment. I am
Yeah.
not a licensed psychologist. I have worked in the psychology field for a while, and I was on my way to a degree as a social worker with a psychology minor. But again, that's just my human take on the information I have.
Well, and I want to remind people again that two things can be true at once. I absolutely believe that this was not a justified use of deadly force.
No, 100. I
1000%
agree with
do not
that.
believe that it was a justified use of deadly force. But as to him, like as a person, I don't know him. I can't speak to him. And what I did see indicated more of like manslaughter, recklessness than it indicated like straight up premeditation. But again, I could be wrong. And you know what sucks is that we'll never know because the federal government took Minnesota out of the investigation and they'll never tell us. That's the biggest problem to me in all of this. If you don't have anything to hide, why cut them out? I think it speaks to something like that.
Oh boy, I'm glad we're not gonna feed the trolls because boy, there's some interesting, fun comments down here.
Oh no. Do I
Oh,
believe it was premeditated? I do not believe it was premeditated in the sense of like planning and things like that. I
right.
think it was certainly reckless and unjustified, but I do not believe it was premeditated in that factor.
I agree with that assessment. Like, I believe the premeditation in the sense of like planning it out or having a preconceived notion that that's what you were going to do. I don't believe that that was a factor here.
I do believe it was premeditated based on their.
So I would be very okay. Respectfully, like based on their own internal reports, like first of all, I don't think any of their own internal reports have actually come out yet, but they were there with all the information we've actually been given. They were there to do door to door searches on homes. Why would they premeditate murdering a civilian blocking traffic? Like,
I
there's
think
no way
she's
to know.
talking about the DO. There was I believe it was in 2014, there was some like internal investigation. And again, I haven't verified this, so I don't
Are
want
you
to
talking
speak out
about
of
putting
turn.
themselves in front of
Yes,
vehicles in
that.
order to
I think that may be
justify?
what's being referred to
Right,
here.
right. Well, I haven't, I'm real big on not speaking about things I don't know about, and that is not an actual investigation that I have looked into, nor do I know who actually conducted that investigation so I won't give it the validity of using it as a source until I do some research on it and verify that it's from a credible place.
I mean, it's an internal investigation from what I understand. What I will say is that
From ICE,
even
like it
even
was a border patrol
uh,
internal investigation.
I want to say it's either Border Patrol or ICE. It's one of the two. It's an internal investigation. What I can say is like
Thank
regardless,
you, Aaron.
even if it is problematic, they obviously didn't do anything through the rest of Obama's administration when this was published. They didn't do anything through the first Trump administration or the Biden administration to like mitigate this issue. So like why are we not firing agents? Like why is this not being trained on more heavily would be my question. I'm not saying agents can't still make the mistake. I'm only saying like why is this not something like that was really harped on?
I would have to read it.
Yeah, we're not bringing anybody up, guys. So we are going an all what? Oh, for fuck's sake. Anyway, okay.
Yeah.
All right, guys, we're gonna
Anyways, I appreciate you
yeah.
discussing this with me in a level-headed way where we're not like over politicizing the issue. We're just trying to get down to the facts.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's like we're going to be back on Friday doing the same thing. We'll put it up in our TikTok profiles. We're going to be back on Friday talking about whatever the pressing issue is at the time. And we'll be here with you Mondays and Fridays. And we hope to see you all then. And please like and subscribe. All
Bye,
right. Bye,
guys.
dudes.